Welcome to Beyond the Next Chapter. I am your host, Whitney Clark. And one of my favorite things since I started this podcast last year is I've gotten to meet so many local authors. And there's a huge community of authors and writers here in the Valley and across Arizona. And I'm so excited to be joined by one of them today, Neely Tubati Alexander. She's known for her women's fiction and rom-coms. She's out with a new book called Courtroom Drama. Her other books have been featured in Cosmopolitan, Elle Magazine, and more. She's previously released In a Not So Perfect World and Love Buzz, which was hailed by Good Morning America as the perfect escapist read. So Neely, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
And it's so nice to meet you like in real life.
I know.
Because I've been following you online for a long time, not in a creepy way, just like in a normal way. I like this woman. She writes books. So I'm so glad you're here.
Same. I know. I always said as soon as I walked in, I feel like I already know you.
Yes, exactly. So tell us a little bit about Courtroom Drama. What's it about? What readers can expect?
Sure. So Courtroom Drama is my third rom-com. It is the story of Sydney and Damon. They were childhood best friends. And just on the cusp of something more, they had something that happened to them that kind of ended their friendship abruptly. And then 10 years later, they end up on the same sequestered jury for a high-profile case of a reality star who is on trial for murdering her husband. So they are put together in sort of a very forced proximity, which is one of my favorite tropes in the romance space, very forced proximity space, and are forced to sort of face their past while also determining if this woman is guilty of murdering her husband.
Speaking of tropes, would you consider this a second chance romance without giving anything away?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's giving anything away when you talk about a happily ever after in romance, but yes, it's definitely a second chance, and forced proximity, I would say are the two biggest tropes.
What are your favorite tropes?
Second chance. I do love that. I think it's really, really fun to explore like the one that got away, and the idea that it's never too late to sort of come back to someone, and sometimes timing may not be right, but you could find that person down the road. It's really hopeful. I also love forced proximity, which is this, and I'm not just saying that because they're the ones in the book, but when you're sort of forced to be with someone, if there's a storm or there's one bed is sort of forced proximity as well. So those are really fun because it truly forces the characters together and having to face things that they perhaps otherwise wouldn't want to face.
Do you have any tropes that you haven't included in your books that you are like, I need to get this in there?
Oh gosh. I feel like I've explored a lot of them. There are some that just aren't my vibe. Like I haven't done a billionaire romance. I'm not really like a, fake baby or fake marriage.
Secret Baby is
Secret Baby. Sorry, I said fake baby.
It's okay. See, I got a similar. I heard someone talk about the Secret Baby. I'm like, I can't even think of a book that I've read.
Yeah, it's not too common.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a few that I just feel like I wouldn't be able to do justice to or wouldn't feel really invested in. But for the most part, the big ones are all fair game and fun to explore.
I love it. So you dedicate this book to your fellow Bravoholics. What is your go-to? What is your Bravo show?
Oh my gosh. Well, I could talk about this all day, but I love all the Bravo shows. I watch all the Real Housewives. I loved Vanderpump Rules. Was so sad to see it go. The only ones I don't watch are, I think, the Below Deck shows, but otherwise I watch everything. And for people who are fans, and the reason that it's dedicated to Bravoholics is because the reality star is essentially a Real Housewife. She's on a show called Authentic Moms of Malibu, but it's based off of the Real Housewives, and there's a lot of Easter eggs in the book for Bravo fans. So if you watch the Real Housewives, you'll pick up some of those.
I have to confess to you that I started reading your book, and about 25 pages in, I'm like, you know what? While I'm reading this book, I'm also going to watch The Real Housewives of OC.
Oh, I love it.
Season 1. I started from the very beginning because I was in high school when that show came out, and we were like obsessed. Like the OC, Beverly Hills, New York, like those OG seasons are forever, I think, my favorites.
Yes. Oh, I love that you watched it at the same time. That's so good.
And it's so funny because I don't remember I don't know if like the last time you've watched the first seasons, but now it is so dated. I mean, it's like 20 years old now. It's just everything about it is so dated. It's like this time capsule time machine that is so entertaining to revisit.
Oh, that's so fun.
Do you have a city that's your favorite?
Oh, let's see. I really I've watched OC the longest. Just because it's the longest running. I think it was the first one, right?
Yeah.
So I've watched that one the longest. I do like Beverly Hills. They are very messy on Beverly Hills. So those are probably my two favorite.
Is Kyle still on?
She's still on and is still driving most of the drama.
I haven't watched. It has been years since I've watched any of the new seasons, but it's been really fun to rewatch the old ones, and it makes me want to rewatch the new ones. What is it about reality TV that's so appealing to you and also to Sydney, who's the main character in this book?
Yeah, and I think a lot of myself is in Sydney. Margot is the reality star that's on trial, and it's such an escape of at the end of the day when you want to just turn your mind off and be able to watch something that's for pure entertainment value. That's my go-to. And I think it is for a lot of people. And then you find yourself getting invested in these stories and in the plot lines and in the people that are on the shows. And so for Sydney, it's an interesting take, especially when you think about social media and the way we treat celebrities or, even reality stars, if you want to call them celebrities, and thinking that we know them because we spend so much time with them on camera. And so her process of thinking she knows someone, this person in particular, Margot, the defendant, but then realizing that she really doesn't. She's only seen kind of what that person wanted her to see on camera. It's a really interesting, it was interesting to explore how much do we actually know about these people too.
Is there a reality star that you maybe thought you knew and then learned more about them and realized maybe that wasn't their true self?
Oh gosh. I don't know if I go as far as Sydney to think that I know anyone. I mostly just follow for the drama and for the entertainment of it all. So I don't know if there's anyone. I will say that did you ever watch Vanderpump?
I didn't actually.
Okay. So some of the drama there was interesting because it started to get a little like, this is too much.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know if I've ever felt that strongly about anyone.
So as you mentioned, Sydney is a big fan of Authentic Moms of Malibu. And one of her sort of issues is she wants Damon to understand Margot is more than a character that's built for entertainment. Do you feel like in real life, some of these people on these shows are misunderstood or portrayed in a way that's maybe not fully accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I think people present what they want you to see in reality TV. But I think more so what was interesting to me with the characters was to sort of explore the idea of getting something and like the celebrity fandom and like you get something from these people and what is it that keeps you invested in their lives and their stories. And for Sydney, it is partly because of her family dynamic and seeing what she wanted in her real life being portrayed from these characters. And so that to me was kind of the more interesting take was why do we put celebrities on such a pedestal and think that we know so much about them when we really don't?
Yeah. So Sydney and Damon are on a jury together, and there's a lot of legal jargon in this book. What kind of research did you do into the court system?
Oh gosh. So there's always a point in a book where I say, what did I do to myself? And there's something that I have chosen to explore that I know nothing about. In my previous book, In a Not So Perfect World, she was a video game designer. And so I don't play video games. I knew nothing about video games. I had to go kind of learn this new space. Same thing here with the court system. I've never served jury duty. I've never really spent much time in the court system. So it was a lot of research. And it does hold up the writing process to really have to go back and think, okay, now wait, what order does the jury sit in? I know they sit in order, but where is number one versus, is it on this side? Is it on this side? And so there was a lot of kind of deep diving into things that were just a blip at the end of the day in the book, but that you wanted to get right, obviously. So yeah, there was a lot of research.
One thing that I loved also is Damon's day job is one of the things he does as an engineer is write the overhead signs. And I just immediately, it was like everyone in Arizona is going to love this because we're so used to the ADOT signs. The book takes place in LA, but I just read that as sort of a nod to Arizona.
Yes. Yeah. It's fun. It was definitely inspired by the fun ADOT signs that we have when you're driving on the freeway and the puns. And a fun fact, I put it in the acknowledgments, but they have been banned starting in 2026. I don't know if that has changed since I did the initial research. So we have to enjoy them while we can.
Well, because I can see how, the criticism is that they can be distracting, which I do understand. And I do love, though, that it's this instant connection between Sydney and Damon, and that they're connected and they don't even realize that they're connected because she's, the book starts with her on the freeway and she sees the sign. So I thought that was really...
it's kind of like red string theory, right? Where you have been connected to someone over the course of your lifetime, even if you don't know it.
Yeah. So Sydney is frustrated because the prosecution, at least, initially in the first half of the book, paints Margot as cold. And she asks the question, how many women have been maligned simply because they aren't endlessly bubbly? Is this something that you've had to deal with in real life as well?
Yeah, I think every woman in any environment, especially in a corporate environment, has dealt with that in some capacity, and that the expectation of constant calm and kindness and smiles and, the way in which we carry ourselves is heavy. And it's hard to navigate at times when you are held to a different standard or higher standard, and there isn't a lot of room for mistake. And so I think Sydney's immediate reaction is to want to give a woman the benefit of the doubt versus automatically malign her the way that it would be easy to do. And she fights against that through the course of the book.
Mm-hmm. And I really love that about her because, as you mentioned, every woman listening has been told, like, you should smile more or something along those lines.
Right.
And that can be incredibly exhausting. So it was nice to see, obviously, Margot portrayed like that. Both Sydney and Damon go through pretty significant traumas, different issues that they run into without giving, again, too much away in their childhoods. What is it like for you as an author to write about these types of experiences?
Yeah, I think sometimes romance gets... People who don't read romance have the idea that romance doesn't cover heavy topics or big things, and it does. Most contemporary romance novels are covering really heavy, big, worldly, contemporary, real-life situations and topics. And part of love is to identify what your challenges are and being able to fully accept it and walk into a relationship, and you bring all of your baggage with you. And so much of relationships, whether they work or don't work, is the exploration of how does that baggage align between the two of us, or how does it potentially not? And so, they are real characters, and everything in their lives comes with them as they try to navigate their relationship. So, in order to write full characters, I think you just have to be able to go there and really think about kind of what has happened in their lives that shape them into whatever challenge they're going to have in accepting this potential love partner and into their circumstances and into their lives.
You already mentioned that you see some of yourself in Sydney in certain ways. What are some other things about Sydney that you can relate to, or you feel like a lot of readers will relate to?
Well, she loves reality TV.
Yeah.
And she is, like we said, someone who will always want to give a woman the benefit of the doubt and really holds herself accountable to, if I feel myself judging someone, particularly a woman, am I doing that because of, the societal things that have crept into even when I'm aware of it, right? Sometimes you end up not being aware of it in certain circumstances. So I do think I try to do that as well in my life. And she, has been really closed off because of the childhood that she has, which I think all of us are that way in some capacity, and is working to overcome some of the things that happened to her that were outside of her control. And a big component, I think, not just in this book, but all of my books are around like, how accountable can you hold your parents for, how you turn out? And I think there's a tendency for a lot of us to want to hold our parents really accountable, when in reality, not to take away from that, because there is obviously a piece of that, but that ultimately we still have control of our own lives and the way we approach them. So there's a little bit of that in me as well.
Yeah. I'm not a parent, so I only have a limited perspective, but I just feel like when I feel those same feelings about getting upset with my parents, which I'm sorry, I love you if you're listening. I feel like my parents have good relationships with them, but everyone's just sort of doing the best that they can with the knowledge that they have at the moment.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Damon and like what as this love interest, this, so the way you describe him is like this big, strong guy, but he sort of has a sweet, sensitive side. And one of my favorite parts of the book was how they send notes to each other back and forth, which is a little bit of a lost art in our digital age.
Yes, very much so.
Anything else you want people to know about him in particular, or did you have any inspiration for his character?
Yeah, I think he is very much, as I thought about him as a character, what has he developed into? He's gone through a lot of trauma in his life as well, some of which Sydney knows, some of which she doesn't learn until later, until they've come back together. And it has shaped him into someone who is very guarded and very observant and quiet. And I really like that sort of mystery that brings to a romantic character. He's sort of the strong, silent type, but he opens up in notes and in writing. And so it's anytime you're writing a love interest, I think what's really interesting for me as a reader, and therefore that I try to incorporate as a writer, is having a character that feels like what you get is special in comparison to everyone else. And it's special and more and different than what they present to the rest of the world. And Sydney really gets that out of him.
So you are a writer, obviously, but as a reader, what are the books that you're drawn to? What are some of the authors that you're a huge fan of?
Yeah, in the romance space, it's hard when you're writing because you never read romance the same. And I don't know if you've had other authors tell you that too, but it just shifts the way that you read. And some of it is unfortunate because you read from the lens of either editorially or from trying to not unconsciously, take ideas or things like that from what you're reading. So romance becomes challenging, and I try not to read a lot of romance when I'm drafting. But I do love Kennedy Ryan, who is amazing. She's one of the only authors where I will have to stop and just think about, like, oh my God, that sentence was so beautiful, So she's a great one. Tia Williams is another who I think is just really great in this space.
Yeah, I read one of Kennedy Ryan's books just recently, and it did the same thing to me. Like, I had to stop and think about it, which that's a special book and good writing when you certainly feel that way. So how did you become a published author? I think every author has their own sort of journey, and it's always so fascinating to me.
Yeah, so English was the only subject I was good at in school. Well, I guess we'll start there. It was the only thing that was interesting to me that I felt like a natural tendency toward and, that I leaned towards and found fun. I always sort of wrote stories as a kid. I wasn't a lifelong reader. I kind of went in and out of that space, but I had the idea that I would write a book someday, and someday, just kept barreling further and further away as life gets in the way. And then COVID hit in 2020, and I was at home. My husband was at home. I had an online kindergartner. I had a toddler at home.
Oh my goodness.
And we were all on top of each other. And I would go into the guest room, lock the door, and I would just write. And it really became what I consider to be self-care time. And I finished a book for the first time. And something unlocks in you as an author when you write the end and when you have finished a book. And it sort of unlocks the idea of, I can do this. If I've done it once, I can do it again. And so that was sort of, I was off to the races from there. That book ended up not going anywhere. I stripped it for parts, I like to say, in my next books. But that was the beginning of really starting this journey for me. And if COVID hadn't happened, I don't know. I'd like to still think that it would have at some point, but it may not have happened in the timing that it did.
How did it feel when you got your first deal? And did you, because I think that I understand this correctly, you send like a query to publishers. Did you get an agent first?
Yeah, so first I queried agents, which is, some might argue, the hardest part. I had no connections to the literary space, so it was a cold query. So no connections. I went into what's called the slush pile, which is sort of the thousands of queries that agents receive. I was lucky enough to get an offer from an agent, and then I leveraged that to go back to some of the other agents that I had been in contact with, and was lucky enough to get a second. And so I ultimately connected with the agent that I went with more. And then from there, you kind of do it all over again with editors at publishing houses and go out on submission. So it's a lengthy process. It's not for the weak of heart. You have to get used to rejection early in this space for sure.
I know that you went to the Tucson Festival of Books, which was just a couple weeks ago or months ago now that you're at the point of listening to this podcast episode. What has it been like to meet other authors in Arizona? Because sort of as I mentioned, there are so many authors in the Phoenix area, and that's been such a lovely thing to get to learn more about.
Yeah, it really is the best part. I mean, the community here is amazing, and I think the romance space is really special in particular, maybe because it's mostly women. But it is really every author I've come across has just been so generous. You ask other authors for blurbs, you ask them to be in conversation with you when you have books coming out. So people are very willing to give you their time and their knowledge. Tucson is fantastic for anyone who has a chance to go. It is one of the best book festivals I've ever been a part of. I got to be on a panel with Allie Hazelwood and Casey McQueeston, which was a dream of mine. I just sat there looking around the room like, I don't know how I got here, but I'm so grateful that I am. And so it's moments like that that really just make all of the challenges of being in the space, because it can be hard. But worth it because of the community that you get to build. And yes, there are so many local authors. I got to meet Jen DeLuca and Sarah T. Dubb and Bonnie Callahan and be on a panel with them. So yeah, there's a lot of bright spots here in Arizona, and I continue to find more authors of, I didn't know you lived here. Yeah. So it's really exciting.
Yeah. What advice would you have for someone who's maybe considering sort of delving into the literary world, and maybe they were kind of starting out like you and didn't have any immediate connections?
Yeah, I'd say finish the book. I know a lot of authors, especially as I was, finding my community and my tribe of other aspiring authors at the time. It's easy to do a lot of things around the process, buy the journals and read the craft books and those are important if that's the way that you learn and that's the way that you approach it. But ultimately you can't do anything unless you write the book. And so I think it takes a lot of just being disciplined in trying to get that done first before you start thinking about who are the agents and building that list and doing all of the things that come later, because the book is the most important part. And sometimes that can get lost in the process of thinking about everything else.
Mm-hmm. And your previous books have gotten national recognition, as we mentioned in the intro, from different publications and from Good Morning America. What is it like for you as an author to see your books in the spotlight like that?
It's so cool. I mean, I read People magazine and I used to take it to the beach with me, and I watch Good Morning America. And so these are really the moments where you're moving so fast. And, I've kept up with a book a year timeline for the last 3 books. And that's a really fast pace for the traditional publishing space, because 6 months of ramp time for publicity and marketing is usually what's happening. And so it does force you to sort of stop and say and look around and really take a moment to appreciate, because those are the things that I do get to check them off my bucket list, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. What is it like balancing kids, husband, home life, and then other work as well on top of writing a book a year?
Yeah, well, that's the question, isn't it? It's funny, and I can't remember. I'm so bad at remembering who said what quote, because I should be able to give them the credit. But you can do everything. You're just not going to do it all well. And so if I'm doing really well over here, something else behind the scenes is failing. And not all the time, but on a daily basis, one might be going really well, the other may not be going so well. And so I've missed kids' games, being on tour. I've missed things, but I also see my kids being really proud of me. They were in Tucson and they got to see a line of people waiting for me to sign things. And they usually don't get to come to things because they're usually out of state or wherever it is. So that was a really cool experience. And so I think that ultimately they are seeing me live my dream and pursue it and work hard for it. So
how old are your kids now?
10 and almost 8.
Okay. And are they readers? Do they like books as well?
They are. We have a big dog man household.
Oh, I've heard a lot about these dog man books.
Yes. You would be amazed how far poop and fart jokes can go. But they get kids into reading, which is the most important thing. And it's really cool to watch them kind of develop their own tastes. And but yeah, they are. We do 30 minutes of reading time every day. Sometimes they don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. But when they find a book that they're really excited about, it's really cool to watch.
So what are the next couple months going to look like for you in terms of Courtroom Drama? Will you be making different appearances in different places?
Yeah, I have a tour, so a small tour. So we'll be going to Seattle, LA. I have a couple of local events as well. I'll be at Wajaya House in Tempe. I'll be at Literally a Bookshop in Gilbert. And I'll be down in Tucson for a books, Friends to Lovers pop-up. So I'm really excited about some of the local events too, to get to expand my community here.
What is it like meeting some of your readers?
It's really great. A lot of your connection is oftentimes through social media. And while that is lovely, it doesn't replace getting to hug someone that you've, interacted with online for years potentially, and then get to finally meet them in person. It's really special. And, so many of these people I would never have known if I didn't write a book and if I didn't write these books. And so it's really cool to be, especially at conferences and festivals where it's all like-minded people who are there because they all love the same thing. So it's really special.
Yeah. So what are you working on right now, and what can you tell us about your future books that you'll be releasing?
Yeah, I sat down to start writing my fourth book, and I just couldn't write a rom-com. I had a lot of rage that wanted to find its way out. No, so I'm writing something a little bit darker right now, and so we'll see what it shapes up to be. But it's been really fun and interesting to explore something new, because even as a writer, it's not that you get bored, but you do want to challenge yourself, and it is really fun and interesting to explore new genres. And thankfully, the publishing world is changing a little bit, where it used to be if you are this, you stay this, and you always have to kind of stay in this little bubble that they place you in, of whether it's rom-com or whatever kind of your first books are, that it's really hard to break out of that. But we're seeing more and more authors change genres, shift gears, and write different things, which is really exciting and fun.
Is it difficult to get into like a different headspace to write in a different sort of tone even?
It can be. I think ultimately, though, if you know what the book is that you're writing, meaning you kind of, for example, rom-coms have some comedic elements in it, right? And these books just don't warrant that. And so it would be like forcing something into space that it just doesn't make sense in. So I think it more is just like understanding what the world looks like of where you're writing.
Is there anything else you want people to know about Courtroom Drama?
Oh, well, it's really fun. I think, so the comps were Legally Blonde and Real Housewives.
Yes.
So if you're fans of those, I also love the comp of the show Jury Duty, which is a little bit more niche, but it was a fantastic show. Ronald Gladden, who was the main character on that show, actually blurbed the book as well, which was a fun get. So yeah, if you're a fan of any of those things, I think this is a book that you might enjoy.
And how do blurbs work? Does your publisher or agent reach out to specific authors to be part of that?
It depends. Usually you kind of go to people you know. But as a debut, I knew no one. So my agent did a lot of that heavy lifting and reached out to people, and they were generous. And yeah, sometimes it's people who might be in the space. If it's a comp of a book that is comparable, then that author might be willing to give a blurb. But it's usually a combination of things. Sometimes you slide into people's DMs, and sometimes that works.
Yeah.
So
it does. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I love Courtroom Drama. It was such a fun story, but also had depth, and I just really loved the characters. And I'm going to continue my Real Housewives rewatch. That's for sure.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.